Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and it's time for the Comics Aficionados. We got a lot of DC Comics information came out, about death metal, about this DC Generations, the lead in to 5G, a character changing that I think is probably going to lead into that, or at least partially, and another event that I think is kind of going to be overshadowed by all this. And I got a panel of DC experts, the best people that I could get my hands on to talk about this. So we kicked Doc to the curb, and in we got Lance. What's going on, buddy?
Not much. Happy Valentine's Day. I hope you did something very romantic with the family, huh?
Oh, I did something.
Well, not all of them.
Life.
That might be kind of gross.
Got the babysitter over, and
so we don't need that in the Philippines. I live right next door to my in-laws, so they were watching the kids. We had a great night. I know, Pele, you had a great Valentine's evening as well. You downed 2 bottles of tequila, a half a bottle of wine.
No. 3 bottles of wine and about a half a bottle of tequila. Yeah, we had a driver with us, and he kind of like, by the time we got back home, he just kind of, piled us out of the vehicle, and we wandered into the house, and he's like, "You guys gonna be all right?" "Oh yeah, we'll be fine. Get out of here. We're gonna."
I would have had to do the same thing to see an opera of Romeo and Juliet. So good on you.
Yeah, it's
taking one for the team and doing what's right for the wife.
Yeah, she wants to go. That's fine. I'm just not gonna watch it sober.
I'm with you, brother. All right, and last but not least is Perch. What's going on, brother?
Hey, had a great night myself. Good night with the wife and the family, but very different activities, of course. And I'm here today, so I'm having a great day.
Yeah, so we had some interesting stuff. Also, Josh will be here. We know he's a huge fan of Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo, and he's going to want to talk about that. So he'll be in here a little bit later. But let's get into it, and let's talk about Dark Knight's Death Metal, the sequel to Dark Knight's Metal, Greg Capullo and Scott Snyder. We got our 2 retail aficionados in here for this. Pele, what's the word on the street? Are people excited about what they've seen so far with all the preview information that they put out this week?
I've not really had a lot of people clamoring, as far as that's concerned. I think what a lot of people are kind of taking a wait and see on this one. I don't know if they're kind of disappointed as far as the direction previously, but I'm sure it'll sell. I'm sure it'll sell well. Just not getting a lot of pre-order buzz on it, or a lot of subscription buzz right off the bat. So we'll see. I'm sure it'll sell.
Are you seeing the same thing as well, Perch?
Somewhat. I think that a lot of people, both retailers and fans, they just assume they're buying it. I think that with the first metal, there was a lot of, I've got to be in on this. I've got to have it, make sure to reserve. And this is probably going to be great. Well, we saw the first issue came out. It did well. And so people are just, it's kind of like, well, yeah, I'm in on that. So it's not the same kind of, I wonder what it will be like. I'm excited. It's more, hey, got Last Night on Earth, got the first metal, and I'm certainly going to get this. When you hear about concerns or complaints with DC, it's definitely not metal. It's everything.
One thing really, just the way that Last Night on Earth wrapped up, I think I had a lot of people complaining. I had a lot of people complaining about that one. So it's like, they're a little bit concerned as far as, they're like, is this going to be what Snyder's going to show up, and just look at metal, the first metal, you really liked it. I think it's going to be in that vein. Last Night on Earth was kind of like a weird thing, so don't hang your hat on that. So
I will agree with your customers. I didn't think Last Night on Earth ended very well. Actually, I was quite.
That's what I'm saying. It was horrible. I think metal ended really well. I'm talking about.
Lance, you felt the same way about Last Night on Earth. You didn't like the ending, right? The first 2 issues were so great.
I love the first 2 issues, and then the 3rd issue I really was looking forward to. I went out the day it came out, and immediately I started reading it, and it was a slog, and it was a bunch of characters standing around, and it was like the plot was trying, like, he ran out of twists in the second issue or something, because the third issue is very predictable and dull, and I don't know, it just stunk. I thought the last issue ruined the whole story. Like, I'd never read that again.
No, it was very weak.
So we know that
very disappointed.
So we know that death metal is like a culmination of a lot of things that Scott Snyder's been working on for years at DC Comics. You know, he built on the Dark Multiverse. We had the original Dark Knight's Metal event, which kind of spawned out into the New Age of Heroes. It's kind of flamed out, but he kept it on with the Batman Who Laughs miniseries, which is going through, which is kind of led into the Infected, which is led into Batman, Superman, and Hell Arisen. But over on the other side, for Justice League, and he's been doing a story with Perpetua and this new Apex Lex, and he just finished up that run, which is going to coincide with this. I know, what did you think about the end of Justice League? Because not everyone was happy with it.
Well, I mean, I'm looking at Snyder's story, and that includes Last Night on Earth and all this stuff as one big story. I think that the way it's being told in pieces, as a reader, I often am irritated by. So, I mean, Justice League, it ended with the tie-in to death metal. It ended as and stay tuned for the next episode. And so I think all that stuff will make a lot more sense once death metal's out and you can read it as one story. I don't think people will be as upset with the end of Justice League. I'm more upset, I guess, with the timing. And this is maybe my own hang-up, but I know I see this with customers and retailers, other people too, is that it seems like everything is off in just terms of sequence. You had this big ending of his to Justice League, and then it's like, well, stay tuned, death metal will be here in a few months. And by the way, simultaneously going on over in Action Comics, we've got Superman doing something with Leviathan. None of this stuff feels like it's fitting together very well. And so to a fan, whether the story is good or not, it feels discordant. And you talk to people and they say, hey, I like this piece or I like that piece. But everybody's struggling with the overall story. And that's I think it's hurting things. You mentioned Last Night on Earth. I thought the ending was off as well. But to me, it read like that he really should have gone 4 or 5 issues with that run, and the third issue seemed like okay, let's tidy it all up. And I wish they would have just given him a couple more issues, or it could have just stretch the story out if you need to in order to land all these things well, rather than trying to go from like crazy action in 1 and 2 to this kind of odd tie up in 3. And that's how Justice League felt as well, honestly, to me. So I'm hoping that death metal then tells us one big complete story. I like Snyder. I think he's a big thinker. I think he aims for the fences every single time he gets up to bat, and that's cool. It feels like the rest of the company and all the other elements need to get on the same page.
I couldn't agree with you more. The weird stuff Bendis is doing with all the pieces that Snyder's been building over in Action Comics, it's so confusing. I don't understand why all this is happening. He's making all these characters that he's built up to be these like super threats that no one can defeat, and he's making them seem lower than Leviathan. He's making them seem lower than the Red Mist or the Red Clouds, whatever her name is. And like they're supposed to tie together. They're saying they tie together, but it almost feels like maybe they don't like each other. Like they don't want them to tie together.
You get that feeling, and as a reader, it just I'll put it this way, and people have said, people at DC, that, hey, I'm overthinking this, or other people. I mean, what we're saying right now, by the way, is a shared feeling amongst a lot of people, a lot of retailers, a lot of fans, and it's you got to say it precise. It's like nobody's saying, God, I hate all these stories. They're saying these stories, I hate the way these stories are coming together. It's more that. I mean, there are people who are big fans. You know, a guy who's a big fan of what Bendis is doing in Action Comics, and I'm glad that he likes it. But even he is saying this does not fit with Justice League. Those things don't fit together well.
Mm-hmm. So Lance, you're not a retailer. You're more of a reader. You saw the preview art and everything that they released on it. I sent you a few articles so you could read up just in case you hadn't read everything. What is your feeling? Are you enthusiastic about death metal? What are you feeling about it?
I had read about half of Metal. I didn't finish that series, but I was kind of looking at it, and Greg Capullo's art is always going to look good, but the story kind of reeks of nonsense to me. It kind of looks like it's, I mean, they could be just maybe like a lot of previews to the point where they're trying to throw everything in the kitchen sink at you right away. So I'm kind of just out of my depth and I don't know what's going on. But I see some interesting hints and things, but ultimately it looks like it's obviously like some kind of Justice League story that's supposed to be extra badass or something. It looks, I guess it's interesting, but it doesn't quite hit me where it's like, I need this. I don't quite get that feeling yet. I see there's like Superman has the long hair and some type of bizarre infection on his arm. Wonder Woman.
Some brass knucks.
Yeah. Batman has a really cool motorcycle, a chopper. It's Chopper Baby, not a motorcycle. He's got that. Then I don't know. It's Wonder Woman as the star is an odd choice. I think I don't really know why she's the star, other than the fact that it's Generation Zero and they're starting with Wonder Woman. But everything Snyder's ever written has to do with Batman, so I was kind of surprised to see her be the star. Maybe it's just out of sheer boredom that he's switched to another character.
I do want to welcome Josh back onto the channel. I love the shirts, Mojo. Nice going. Appreciate it. I know you're a more enthusiastic supporter of Snyder and Capullo. You're definitely more less skeptical than Lance about death metal. What is it about this event that's got you so amped up and enthusiastic for it?
Well, I loved the first round of metal. I loved this start to finish. So I'm really excited for the sequel. And I don't think I've ever read anything by Snyder and Capullo that has disappointed me. I've read stuff from Snyder that has disappointed me, but when the two work together, they've never let me down. So it's just kind of like it's the Golden Team getting together for one last ride, and it's gonna be a wild one if I know those two guys at all. So that just having those two on it has me hyped.
Yeah, there's like two series, I think, from DC in the last 5 years, as far as limited series, that people have really pointed to and been, it built enough excitement at the time that those have become really strong back issues. And one of them is White Knight, and the original White Knight, and the other is Metal. So it's got big shoes to fill. So. Although, like I said, not a lot of people have really been hyping it up. But I think Perch has really had a really good point before, is that people are all bored. They're like, okay, I'm ready for it. And one of the reasons is that I haven't gotten as many pre-orders on that is that people are waiting to see the selection of the variants, and
that's true.
That's problematic. Because 80% of what I ordered was cover A, because, unless people specify, I don't really go in, testicles deep on ordering a whole bunch of, different types of variants. And there's so many for this run, so many of them, that it's like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And so, it's beautiful, beautiful work. Some of the Capullo, and then you had that gorgeous one by who did that one? Anyway, this is absolutely beautiful variants out there. So I think that may have bitten into a lot of the pre-sales chatter and a lot of the early subscription grabs.
You are correct. I can you see that in different retailer groups and other things. That's a very common story. People are waiting to see the final list of variants, or waiting to see what can come out. I think everybody is assuming that people are going to pre-order and buy it. I would suspect that a lot of comic fans and other people are going to just kind of, expect that it's DC's huge event. There's going to be plenty at the store. There's zero risk of running out. So, pre-ordering and that kind of stuff is a lot less important for a big event. And I don't know, Pele, if you've been here, I've been hearing this a lot lately for big events. People still want it. They just do not feel compelled to reserve it because there's an assumption the shop will just have tons. That drives some interesting pricing on dark metal.
Yeah, that's going to. I think it's going to affect the print run as well, because we're going to, if I'm going into this with only 26, 27 people that have reserved copies of it, my purchasing is not going to be heavy, and I think it's going to reflect, I'm not alone in that. So although a lot of people are going to be ordering, a lot of stores are going to be ordering it, it's perhaps not going to be quite as heavily ordered as it should be. And there'll be a lot of reprints. So, or at least be a couple reprints of the first issue.
Yeah, shops can't afford to have just 300 issues of anything just laying around. I mean, everybody's assuming it's going to sell really well, and shops will order big and everything else. But if pre-orders are low, then shops will order, say, plus 100. And if the interest is plus 200, then some people are going to have some problems getting the comic. And so, pre-order your comic, folks, and there are a lot of variants. I totally agree with you. Now, keep in mind, this is not Iron Man Fantastic Four level of variants still, but it is a lot of variants.
That's good. Thank God.
Not 100, not 50, but there's probably 20 good variants out there.
It's high for DC. That's true. It's very high for DC.
So it's a situation like I was telling customers.
One thing we have seen is new. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say that we have telling people, just go ahead and pre-order. Let me know how many copies I need to get in, and then if you don't like cover A, then you can. If I've got something else, then you can swap it. So, go ahead.
Is he lagging? Or
I don't know.
It looks like he's frozen on my screen. Oh,
yeah, he looks frozen.
Yeah.
I am having some communications issues here, so I apologize for that. One of the things that we're seeing is different. Right.
I thought you were back.
He's getting everything about 5 or 10 seconds afterward.
Well, let's just be on the alert. He'll join us up here in a second, and then we'll tag back off to him when he starts talking. But I mean, I will say, Josh, I think I liked metal as well. I think a lot of people did, and again, we were talking about a little bit before you were here, is that I think that in my view, the people I talk to, most people feel like Snyder, and certainly Snyder Capullo, are a winning team, and there's a feeling like that's going to be a good comic. It's great. The consistent comment I get is, number one, is this event going to matter? Meaning, is it going to be a fun ride? We're going to enjoy it. But then after the fact, is it the company's going to quickly scramble away from it? Or, what is going on? There's a lot of concern and angst about everything surrounding it. Far more than this event.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've also there's I've noticed that driving sales as far as back issues, Teen Titans number 12 is picked up incredible interest again. So it's I think last 2 copies we sold at $90 raw.
Wow.
So
nice. What happened to issue 12? Is
Batman
First appearance of Batman Who Laughs. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, from the new run.
Had a 9.8 sold for $370. So
oh my God. Wow.
So the back issue market on things related to metal is very strong. So it's an interesting situation. There's also a couple of odd convention covers that they show up every once in a while and they sell for similar money. So I mean, it's anytime metal comes around, there's certain key issues to kind of keep an eye out for, and it's a good example right there.
Do you think that this whole series is going to end with Snyder on Wonder Woman, or what series, I wonder, is going to launch out of death metal?
Well, 5G will. I think Snyder has said that he's going to move away from superhero books. That could be a feint, but if he says he's going to move away from that for a bit, do some of the creator-owned stuff, pick up American Vampire. I think, again, it's a speculation, but I think one thing that I want to point out, I'm glad you brought it up again, is they say a lot of the news sites are reporting this as a Wonder Woman centric event. And what's interesting, if you read the press and you read kind of the tie-in and everything else, it doesn't say it's a Wonder Woman specific event. The official word from either Snyder or DC, it says that, you know, she's going to kick off stuff at the beginning because she's leading this kind of resistance, which is what we saw in Last Night on Earth. And we see the pictures of her with the chainsaw and everything else. What I'm getting more, and what if you actually read the comments, it's more, this is a Justice League centered event where the heroes, just like Metal was, you know, maybe there's some Wonder Woman bits in the beginning. It seems like a lot of news sites have kind of jumped to the conclusion that it's a Wonder Woman event from that first promo issue and that text. But if you actually, you know, everything Snyder has said is more, this is a Justice League theme event. And I think this is sites kind of wanting to go in on that. And I think it's also people making a tie-in to the Wonder Woman movie that's coming out this year and kind of putting two and two together. It doesn't necessarily fit. I think this will be a heavy Justice League event. Yeah.
Yeah, I do too.
I have a hard time thinking that they're going to break up Snyder and Capullo, though. Capullo has 4 or 5 years left on his contract. So what's the project? I wonder that they're, because I know some people in the chat are saying he's not going to do superhero comics.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, he has to do something for DC.
Sure.
Other than American Vampire, because nobody cares about that. So,
well, I think you know they have said they're going to work together again. They haven't said on what. I'm sure they will. They're good friends, and all that goes together. And I think they do print money. I think that they will do some either creator-owned stuff, because even with, I think, his contract, he still has the ability to do creator-owned. Capullo does. We know Snyder does. And I wouldn't be surprised to see DC, you know, have Capullo and Snyder do some things on the fringe. It's going to sell really well because of who they are, and I mean they're for the next year plus they're kind of locked into 5G and then what comes after 5G, which is going to be a lot more Bendis led, a lot more of some of these other faces. So I think you're not going to see Capullo, I think, suddenly start working on, you know, Action Comics with Bendis. I think you're going to see more projects with Snyder, and we'll see how they shake out.
More prestige projects, I bet. They'll all be miniseries, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And keep in mind, too, I mean, you've got AT&T, you've got their streaming service, you got them wanting to do other films. And so, you know, having Snyder and Capullo do something that's not necessarily prime DC is just creating limited series IP for them to ignite somewhere else. I just, there's money to be made everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you were talking. You're raising your eyebrows about the 9.8 sale. Another comic shop friend of mine in North Carolina sold a CBCS 9.9, one of two graded. He sold it for $3,200.
Oh my God, that's insane! Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, there's money. There's money in modern high grade. So yeah.
That's such a bad investment though for the buyer.
Well, is it? You're looking at a real mint, you know, something that's so incredibly rare of a character that's very popular. So, you know, it's not like a 9.8 where there's, you know, 1,000 copies of them graded floating around. You know, you got
9.9 is rare. That's
rare.
crazy.
Yeah, I mean,
I just think like modern comics are they rise and fall so quickly. You know, once the Batman Who Laughs or whoever disappears for a year and we all forget about him, it's gonna be, unless he shows up in a movie, it's gonna drop $1,000 off of that. You know,
I think it'll be a good recurring character though. I don't think they're going to kill him off, and I still think that he's going to have some place within the DC universe going forward, and he will have some type of introduction. One thing that's interesting is if you look at the way that Robert Pattinson's costume for Batman is very gothic, very kind of, you know, the leather and the, you know, it's almost like a steampunk kind of vibe, and that really fits well with metal. So, you know, I think
I could see that, yeah. Or the Snyder run when he was more stripped down during Zero Year, it kind of looks like.
Yeah.
I do think they're going to try and tie to these things more. I mean, Metal was a financial success, and things that are financial successes will translate their way to film eventually in some form or fashion. I would not be surprised at all to see Batman Who Laughs put on the shelf for a while following this event. They have used him a lot. They did kind of shuffle him into the bigger mix, it sounds like, with Death Metal than Luthor. So I do think there's a, they can kill him off or do things with him that maybe they preserve Luthor for later. I don't know, but a couple of questions from the chat. Really, some people had asked, first, did Snyder and Capullo, didn't they say this would be their last Batman story for a while, a few times? And yes, they kind of have. This has gone on before. So if a year and a half there's, super Death Metal, the event, I think nobody would be terribly shocked, although I think we take them at their word at the moment that this is the big conclusion. And the other question was, how long is 5G going to last? I mean, nobody really knows. There's been no formal word, but at least what we're hearing at the retailer level is a 6 to 9 month Age of Apocalypse style, run, and that's been really consistent from folks at DC. So I would expect something like that. But maybe we have Wes back.
We do have it back.
Excellent.
Have you
covered for
have you talked about the new versions of Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman that we're seeing?
I was just about to. I had the next page pulled up for the interior art covers, but that looks
okay.
That looks impressive.
Let's talk about the new characters. We got Batman with the scythe, and he's on a motorcycle. We got a Wonder Woman with the chainsaw of truth, and we've got a Superman that he's infected with something. He's got brass knuckle. He's got his mullet back. Do we think these characters are coming from the Dark Multiverse as part of that Tempus Fugit thing that he was doing in the Tales from the Dark Multiverse, where he was trying to find heroes that survived that universe to come and help our heroes?
I think this is our heroes that we know it in our current universe, at least the big ones we've seen. Now maybe not. It's promo art. Who knows what he's mixing and matching? But I definitely think that the core DC heroes are going to be through the ringer when we start this event. They're going to be messed up. They're going to be struggling. I mean, I think from the promo art, they said Superman has been kind of enslaved in the sun and is powering it, and so this is going to be an insane event. I think we're going to see tons of different multiverse versions throwing in. I think we'll see the tie-in. I know we'll get to it later, tie-in to Wally West and all of it. But I mean, this is the how crazy can you go of our heroes, and I think it'll be our heroes and the multiverse heroes will be affected by this.
Yeah, that one panel is pretty intense. It's got the Swamp Thing there. Swamp Thing's on fire, walking by Wonder Woman. It's like, whoa. It's a very, very interesting panels for sure. Yeah,
the preview art looks amazing, but I think we all knew that was going to be the case. I've never actually looked at a Greg Capullo comic and I thought, well, I think he didn't hit it on this one. You know what I mean? It's always he has the perfect gothic stylings for Scott Snyder's Batman work. His stuff worked perfectly with Dark Knight's Metal. They certainly inspired a ton of other tie-in books. Perch, do you know how many tie-ins we're going to get? Are we going to get a backstory for all these new versions of the heroes like we did last time?
I don't know the exact number. I heard anecdotally to expect somewhere around double what we got for Metal of one-shots. I love that expression. I hear it, Josh. That's what I've been told to expect. I've been told that DC felt like they lost out on some easy money last time by going short on comics and interest in the event. So I would definitely expect more this time, and I think double. I don't know. As a rule of thumb, as a finger in the air test, I think double is what we're going to get.
So we got about 10 right last time.
Yeah. I think all in we're looking at about 25 to 28 if you count Death Metal as well into that mix. I think this entire event is about 25 to 26. That's my estimate, plus whatever the ongoing tie-ins are going to be. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we do have a super chat from Nalo, $5. Thank you very much for supporting the channel. I very much appreciate it. Will Death Metal do anything to bring in new readers? My initial reaction would be some, yes. Like, I think people will be excited about this. Maybe some lapsed fans will hear, oh, there's a new big event. Maybe I've dropped off since Metal. Maybe I should come back for this. But I don't think it's going to bring in like new readers that have never read comics before. What do you think about that, Paley. Is this something that you think will bring in like a new reading audience for DC Comics?
Yeah, I think so. One thing that I've seen lately is that that these events, you know, if they're well backed and they have good creators attached to them, will, if you know, people get on social media and stuff, they see that certain events coming out, that they'll come back to the shop after they've been away for a while, and a new event, sort of strikes them, and they will. If DC isn't doing well as far as ongoing series, at least it seems like a really good limited series can draw people back to the shop sometimes. And this particular event seems to be a little bit more effective than others as far as that's concerned.
Mhm.
So
I think if you put some of these one-shot pictures of that Capullo's drawn and put in the window with a poster, I think you'll get people coming in.
Oh yeah, that's what's
Totally
impressive.
agree.
Yeah, it's there's very few artists out there that, especially for DC, that are quite as accomplished as Capullo and as I guess emotion invoking. Yeah, that's definitely going to be the strong selling point here. I mean, I'll buy it even if if the word balloons are all blank, just so I can get Capullo's artwork. But we'll hopefully the story matches what we're seeing visually.
I know the first metal brought in people who hadn't read comics since they were kids that I knew that were my friends, and just because like they would ask me questions because they're like, is this how it works, or do I need this issue? And the nice thing about metal was it was very easy for a new reader to understand what to read.
Yeah.
And there wasn't too much of it. It was only 8 issues.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the really nice part about that is it's a good jumping on point. And I'm going to be selling a lot of the trade paperbacks and a lot of the back issues of metal. For this, it's going to be a really good seller again. Not that it's slipped very much. It's always been pretty popular. And like I was talking about, the previous tie-in back issues are going to be very hot for a while. So, and I think it's a great time. It's a great time to get into those tie-in back issues because they're not going to get cheaper. I mean, there's going to be a movie tie-in. There's going to be other television show tie-ins and whatnot. Justice League Dark is directly tied with this, and Justice League Dark is going to get its own movie, they said, in 2023, 24. But so yeah, this is going to be something. So go ahead and get into those back issues and get ready for some really interesting storytelling, in other formats.
So I want to say thank you very much to Nalo for helping support the channel. We know that there's going to be like a sorcerer version of Batman. We saw from some promotional art from Capullo that he put out, it looked like there's going to be an octopus version of Batman. So it looks like he's not so much merging with other DC heroes this time. Is that the way everyone's understanding it now that we're seeing some of the pictures?
I think so. I mean, it sounds like it's going to be less. It certainly sounds like it's going to be less Batman centric. So that will probably have something to do with not getting an entire anti-Justice League that's just Batman with everyone else's powers. Which I'm not knocking that idea. I thought that was one of the coolest things I've ever seen. But it seems like the concoctions, I guess you can say, or the composites we're going to get are going to be a little different this time around. But I think it'd also be very cool if they managed to connect some of those to like the previous metal stories. So like if you connect this octopus Batman to what was the Batman, the Drowned or whatever.
Drowned.
The Drowned. Yeah. If you would connect the two together and say like maybe he came from that Earth and was just like some kind of messed up experiment thing or something like that. I think that'd be really cool if they managed to do that. I'm really hoping that like this sorcerer Batman, that there might be some kind of tie in there with maybe like Dr. Fate or Zatanna or something like that. I think that'd be really cool. But I have a feeling we're going to see Snyder pull out some different card tricks in this event, which will be really neat.
So we recently did a video on Snyder Capullo, and one of the things we kind of marveled at was the Wild Hunt, and how it was probably the weirdest comic that we've ever read in our lives. Perch, are you expecting anything that weird? Is Snyder going to try and outdo that comic?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I absolutely think so. He is going to try and put the craziest idea. I mean, if we take him at his word, and this is truly the last of him with Kate Books for a while, then this is the chance to make the craziest possible idea. And I think, like Josh was saying, we got to experiment with different variants of Batman. Now we get to experiment with different variants of Superman, Wonder Woman, the entire kind of DC universe. So I mean, I can picture Capullo and Snyder, sitting at a dartboard randomly tossing ideas on the wall to amalgamate the weirdest possible creations they can. I think there's definitely going to be a can we top this every page. This is a spectacle event comic. And it's interesting because if you look at kind of what Marvel's event strategy or DC's event, various people, if you look at Bendis's philosophy against Snyder's philosophy, just the two of them together, Snyder he has a philosophical belief that event comics should be the craziest thing he could possibly shoot out of a shotgun onto the page to make you go, I never expected that. Whereas Bendis's philosophy is far more of a, hey, let's build to a story. And I've got this, this will lead to the next thing, which will lead to the next thing. It just will save something back. It's just very, very different approaches coming out. And so to me, it's refreshing a little bit because most people, certainly with Marvel and with DC, I think, take more of that Bendis strategy of this event will tee up the next event, which will tee up the next event. And to Snyder's credit, he just is like, this is the last event people are going to read before they die. Screw it. We're going all out. And that's... whether you like it or not, you can admire the spectacle. For me, some people hate it, but I find it refreshing. I've got lots of the alternative.
You make an interesting point because I think that you'll see DC fans reject this event setting up event type of thing that Bendis is famous for, because DC has never done it that way. Everything has always been Millennium and it's over, or Crisis and it's over, and Leviathan didn't end. It's still going on. Yeah. And if that's how Bendis is going to approach everything, I think you're just going to see like diminished returns because want this shit. They want it to be over, and you can harken back to it, but you don't need an Infinite Crisis comic coming out 3 years after Infinite Crisis is over.
Right. But I would guess Bendis was brought over with that in mind. I mean, I think DC and Didio said, hey, this guy set up an event strategy that is currently having them beat us in the financials. And so let's bring that philosophy over here. Let's get the same thing rolling over here. I mean, it is Leviathan is going into the next Leviathan. It's already marketed, the next event. And we've got 5G right on the heels of Death Metal. And so it's just, I think they are moving in that direction. So I'm going to appreciate this run for its life. Sorry, Pele, I interrupted you.
Oh no, I was just going to comment though that I'm getting so many people now, so many customers now that they didn't really like Bendis before, and now it's like changed to outright. I wouldn't say hatred, but it's strong dislike, and they're like, "Oh, Bendis is attached to this. Screw it. I don't want it. I don't want anything to do with it." And the sales numbers are abysmal. And it's at least with Snyder, that he's going to leave everything. He's not going to leave anything on the table. He's going to put it all out there, and it's not going to kind of just dribble off, like Bendis does. So I'm just the direction that they've gone, giving half of all the properties over to Bendis, just to me, every single month just makes me feel that this was just the worst idea.
Well, my question...
Hold on, guys. Hold on. We're on a timetable here.
Sorry.
We need to wrap up the Death Metal conversation.
All right.
So I know a lot of people are saying this feels like maybe the end of their run with DC Comics, and once Death Metal's on, they're gonna step off of DC Comics. let whatever happens is going to happen, and then maybe they'll come back when the ship is righted. Is that how you're feeling about DC Comics right now, Josh? I know it's your favorite publisher.
Well, I was a little behind on the recent DC news, so last night and this morning I got caught up on the links you sent me, but that's how I was feeling. But with all this stuff with what's happening with Wally West and some of the creators that I'm seeing on the Generations stuff, it might not be the end of my DC. I'm going to have to wait and see. I think it's definitely going to be the end of me considering DC's continuity. So anything maybe after this, I'll just kind of treat as like one-shots or just random things that I can dabble into and still enjoy. But this might be the end of DC's overall continuity to me. But I'm not so sure now because I'm reading, Snyder came out and said that this event's going to connect DC's timeline to Doomsday Clock, and that's what I've always wanted. I've wanted that since Doomsday Clock #1 came out, and it hasn't changed. So if they manage to do that, and this new timeline gets set up, and it's not garbage, which, that's asking a lot from Dan Didio, but if they manage to stick the landing with some of this, then probably not. But as far as continuity goes, I'm expecting it to be the end. I probably contradicted myself somewhere in that, but that's kind of how I feel. It's like a mixed bag of feelings. So yes and no. In some ways, yes. In some ways, no.
All right, Lance, how do you feel? Does this feel like it's going to be the end of an era for DC Comics? Maybe you're going to step away, or are you going to see what Generations is all about? Maybe stick it out.
Well, admittedly, I only have been purchasing a handful of in continuity DC titles, and most of my buying from them has been miniseries or Black Label. I feel like their continuity is already in a rough spot. It already has been all over the place for the last 2.5 years. The only thing they seem to get correct is that Dick Grayson isn't Dick Grayson. Everything else seems to be kind of like they don't know what to do with characters, or they're all over the place. 5G, I don't understand why it has to replace the main characters for any period of time. Why not just have them publish it alongside the main characters and have them continue? But I won't be able to purchase any of that. There's nothing appealing about, from what my understanding of what 5G is going to be to me. I don't get it. It seems like it's too big of an alternate universe to do. I don't. Is that what it is? Right? It's going to be a replacement of all.
We're about to talk about 5G.
Okay.
Yeah. So Pele, at your shop, are people seeing death metal as an opportunity to step out of DC Comics once it's complete?
I think so. I think that they're just kind of annoyed and kind of like a good wrap-up point and say, okay, sort of step back from that. I've not heard that specifically, but I've seen enough pullback as far as the as far as their pull lists are concerned. So we'll have to see. The bloodbath over Bendis as far as the pull list has been biblical. I mean, we're talking scorched earth, and it's true. It's just it's been hideous, and I still Batman. I don't know how long it's going to take for Batman to recover as far as losing so many on the list. It's eventually it will, but and Bendis is the same way. It's going from from, well, I would say more than half of the people have pulled those Bendis titles off their pull list. So what will it take? And it's going to take getting rid of Bendis. It's going to take new writers, and maybe just kill it off, start over again. People are getting tired of that too. So I got my fingers crossed that there's going to be something on the horizon that'll kind of pull up and change things. But right now I just don't see it happening. So Death Metal is going to be great. I think it's going to be really, really solid. And there's going to be individual books that are going to come out that it's going to be really good, and limited series that will. But as far as ongoing continuity titles, I don't see anything changing in time in the near future.
All right, so now let's move on to DC Generations. They also announced that it's going to be a series of 5 one-shots. Talent ranging from Robert Meditti, my favorite writer, to Brian Michael Bendis, not my favorite writer, and I believe Joshua Williamson's in there. A lot of good creators. Doug Mankey is on the first one as well, and it's going to lead us all into this big 5G thing that we've all been hearing about. Perch, what was your reaction when you saw the initial solicits for this DC Generations?
I think that there's some potential for some good issues in there. Certainly, I think that there will be some kind of stories to fill out this timeline throughout. This is a step toward 5G, or this is kind of a slow movement toward that. I don't think this is the big thing for DC. I think this is kind of I'm searching for the right word, filler, if you will. That sounds too limited, but it's something that's going to kind of be able to tell a couple very precise stories as we get into the next thing. I think that it fits along with the question was asked earlier of why is DC canceling, or not canceling, but pausing issues to go into 5G. I mean, the biggest reason is what we saw with the New Age of Heroes. They tried to launch these things side by side with the regular titles, and people just never went into them. They just kept with the regular titles. Like we saw with Age of Apocalypse, this approach kind of forces people to adopt and see these other books. It's certainly a gamble, and we'll see if it pays off. But I think Generations is a way to kind of both soften that blow a little bit, and also help educate fans that, hey, there is a bigger plan going on. No, your favorites are not going to just instantly vanish as we youngify all of them. It is a way to kind of keep people warm while they're doing this gamble. And I do feel like they feel like they're backed into having to do this gamble. I wouldn't do it.
Why is that?
But they do.
Why do you think they feel like they're been backed into a corner on this?
Well, I think because it is a sense of the New Age of Heroes was something they expected to land bigger. It didn't. I think that there is the feeling like they've got this new media attention. And by the way, I think this is based on a false premise, but I think that they believe that they've got to start bringing in some new characters, some fresh things to bring in new viewers. It's like something I think Nola in the chat said. Why will Death Metal bring in new viewers or new readers? I mean, the reality is, good comics bring in new readers, regardless of what they are, regardless of where in continuity. I mean, Metal was, you would say, kind of dense and hard to get people into comics that were new. If you just take it on its face, I mean, you got Multiverse, you've got Hawkman over here. I mean, it's any comic professional would tell you, oh, that's continuity dense. New readers will have a hard time understanding this. And yet, new readers came in, they saw amazing art, they saw a crazy story, and they went for it, which is the lesson comics has been teaching us for 50 years. So, but regardless of that, I think DC feels like they've got to do something instructive, and they've got to kind of almost hold the hands of people to broaden their audience, to bring in new readers. And I think that's what this is. I think it's a false premise, but I think they feel like if they don't do this, then they're going to continue to be back in number 2. They're never going to be able to get these new readers, and it's going to continue to struggle with them. I just wish they'd learn the lesson of amazing comics, bring in new readers. It can be as simple as that.
I do want to, this is a little bit off topic, but I do want to ask you about this. Yeah, I think people are starting to notice when they're opening up their DC comics right now that they're trying to like transition to all YA novels. That's all you see that they're promoting right now is this line of YA books that aren't in continuity with different versions of the characters from writers that people don't know who they are. They're going for pretty hard. It seems to be going hand in hand with this generation. Is that part of their strategy as well?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think there's somewhere it's been identified that, hey, we need to get new readers. Hey, our existing readers are getting old. Therefore, the younger audience is what we've got to go for. And this is a comic audience that grew into comics in the 80s and the 90s. And this is our fertile ground. And I also think if we don't grab it, we're ceding it to Disney. And Disney is showing every indication of fighting this fight in multiple fronts. I mean, we talk a lot about Marvel and kind of what they're doing, but at the same time, simultaneously, Disney Publishing is both buying properties and pushing a bunch of things out has nothing to do with Marvel, all aimed at YA. They are trying to take it. So it is. I think this is DC saying, we've got to have a piece in this fight. And Doc in his super chat, I mean, I think this is very risky what they're doing, but it's built on this premise that it's exactly the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm. So did anyone else hear that echo on Perch, or is that just me?
I don't know if it's me. I think it may be the microphone that went down there.
Interesting. So I do want to say thank you very much to Doc for the $4.99 super chat. 5G is just DC's version of all new, all different, or now it's going to be flop even harder too. I agree with you on that because DC and Marvel do have crossover as far as audience goes, but I think the expectations from DC readers is different than Marvel readers, and I don't see them really accepting this or really embracing it. What do you think about that idea, Pele?
I'm sorry, you broke up completely on me on that. The
Doc super chat here.
Okay, let me read it again. Let me read the super chat. This version of all different. That's what I'm afraid of. It's we're going to see a Marvel Now event, and that concerns me. I almost think that customers are expecting it. So what I've seen of them, they're like, "Oh, is this going to be Marvel Now?" And it's like, I hope not, but could be. But that's kind of the fear right now. I don't think that. I almost get the feeling that I don't know if it's desperation or what, but it's not a good look, and I don't think that their heads in the right place with this right now. We'll wait and see on it. I don't think we'll really know until the pages start running. So,
all right, Paley. So my question was, Marvel and DC have crossover in audience, but it's not complete crossover. And when people read DC comics and they read Marvel comics, their expectations are different. Do you think that this will turn off, DC readers more than it would Marvel readers? Yeah,
I do actually. Marvel had been kind of abused. Marvel readers kind of been abused up to that point anyway. DC readers, although they've been abused lately, I think that this might be a new level for kind of where they might feel like a lot of the characters they love and a lot of the storylines and continuity that they enjoy, is being flushed. I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. But I'm afraid that that rather than put out consistent quality and with good stories and good art and trying to rebuild that trust and faith, they're going for the completely different model, looking for a model of completely all and new. So, and longtime customers, that just does not work with them. They've been there, they've seen that, they've been to the fair, and they've seen the pony show. So, they're not interested in that anymore. And I think one thing that's probably going to hurt DC is Marvel's failures, and people remember that, since you have customers that read both. They're like, oh, well, I've seen this before, I know where this is going, and they kind of they don't even bother to check it out. So it's I've already heard customers calling it DC Now instead of 5G. So that's bad. That's real bad when they're just oh, it's DC Now, I don't want anything to do with that. So
I do want to say thank you very much to Doc for the $4.99 super chat. Thanks for helping support the channel. Really appreciate the question. So Perch, one of the things I wanted to ask you was, with 5G happening in these generation stories that are leading into it, there's a couple of creators on there that got me really excited. Venditti's my favorite. I think Williamson's really strong. But then you throw Bendis's name in there, and he's pretty divisive among, DC readers right now. Do you think it's smart to put somebody that maybe isn't resonating with readers right in the middle of that run? Because do you think some readers just won't pick up the first one because they know there's going to be a Bendis book eventually?
Yeah, well, I mean, what the alternative is, what do you do with Bendis? I mean, he's such a core part of DC. He's clearly an architect of many of their plans, and I would suspect probably the primary architect of 5G itself. I think they're committed to that path. So if he wasn't part of it, I don't know what you would do. So I think that we're all in on that, and I mean, I think there's no getting around it now. I do think, because we get on the channel and this is why everybody always accuses me of being a fence sitter and other things. I mean, at the end of the day, we do need to see these comics. I think there are some good name people. There are some very good name people on these books. So, we're all saying 5G, it can suck. Oh, we have some ideas of what it might be, partially because of what Marvel's done in the past and everything else. But there are some good names, and I strongly believe that when all is said and done, we look back on these comics, there will be some that are good, and there will be some that are crap. And 9 months, later, are the ones that we like will have survived, and the ones we don't will probably trundle along. I think that we'll, I think that people are looking at this a little bit more fear than usual because of Marvel's failures. And the reality is, this is an event. This is DC trying to get into this market, like I mentioned, trying to play in that YA audience and try to bring in new readers. The only thing that irritates me about the whole mess is that I don't think it's that hard to grab new readers and grab market share. I think if you tell good comics, the continuity issue, everybody at cons, they constantly bring this up like, oh, our continuity is so dense. To the contrary, I think it's that continuity, and you see it with metal, with all the Tales of the Dark Multiverse and all the rest of that stuff. If it's a good story, people can hang with continuity, no problem. You got to quit saying that's your flaw. I think that is DC, more than Marvel, that's DC's strength. And I think there's almost an assumption that the readers are dumber than they are. The readers get it, including new audience gets it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the main problems I've seen is that Bendis in particular, he makes mistakes, but he doesn't seem to learn from those mistakes. He's like he doesn't learn from the errors that he's made in the past. He just tries to put a different spin on it, or he tries to doll it up a little bit differently. Oh, well, maybe if I try this a different way, it'll work. And he just pitches the same thing over and over again. And you know what they say about people who keep trying the same thing, expecting a different result, But and that's the main problem I've got with him is Bendis doesn't seem to learn from his mistakes.
Yep.
So
the challenge, though, is that the market has educated Bendis, and I think the publishers, that his books sell. Now, again, keep in mind the last 2 years have shown a big crack in that armor. But his Marvel run, he was on top of the big events. I mean, he was getting continual feedback that his stuff was what worked. Now, you could argue Marvel, the other things they were doing worked even less, and that's why his stuff was at the top, or he was at the right place at the right time, or people liked the stories at first and they got tired of them. I mean, Civil War II was the first time he had the kind of dud label put on him while he was at Marvel in a big sense. He came over to DC. They rolled out the red carpet, and they immediately involved him in everything. And I think as long as you're getting that kind of feedback, yeah, I think you're going to keep doing the same things. And then I think it's going to take more, hey, this really isn't working. I would love to be in the halls of DC where somebody's going, hey, wait a minute. When I look at this, I can put Snyder and Capullo on a comic book about a tumbleweed, going down the highway, and it seems to sell amazing. And we put all this marketing effort over here for Action Comics, and it's doing sub numbers. So maybe, just maybe, we've got some good talent here in house that we should not be so quick to dismiss.
Right.
I'm glad that you're talking about talent. One of the things I've noticed about myself, just the way that I'm buying now, my buying habits have changed. Have evolved with the industry. I'm no longer, or I'm much less married to characters right now. I'm much more married to creators. Whereas Nightwing, probably my second favorite DC character right after Hal Jordan. I'm not buying him right now. I have no interest in the story because it's not even the creator. I think Jurgens is great, but I just don't like where the character's at. So I've unmarried myself, so I'm not buying stuff that I don't enjoy. Lance, do you see yourself doing that as well? Or are you less, connected with the characters and more connected to the creators, like I'm kind of doing?
I actually started doing that, I think, during All New, All Different Marvel, when I'm a massive Punisher and Captain America fan, and I have not found myself able to buy those titles for almost 8 years straight, like, other than the new Garth Ennis stories.
I was about to say, I hope you're getting Punisher Soviet.
Right. I mean, that's everything I want and need. Yeah. So I started to learn that, but it's going to be a bitter pill to swallow the day I can't buy a single Batman title. And I had to do that during the DCU period when I couldn't read the Jim Gordon Batman. And that was tough. That was a full year of no Batman. And
yeah,
it's tough because, like, when you have a favorite character, I don't even need greatness. I just need, like, stability, and I'll buy it and I'll be happy. And when they don't even offer you stability, I mean, you said Nightwing. I mean, he's not even Dick Grayson anymore. And I've heard that series been dead in the water since they shot him in the head, really.
Yep.
They shot him in the head. Yeah, that's what they did.
So,
Josh, you're a huge Nightwing fan. They changed the character. But you've been sticking it out. How much longer can you see yourself doing that? It's gotta be rough.
I feel like I've committed so much to the character. I mean, I'm writing my master's thesis on him, so I've committed so much to him at this point that I'm here for whatever he goes through, whether I like it or not. It's kind of like, yep, you're here, and that's it, and you can't leave because you've just committed too much to this. So, I mean, I have, huh?
Is this the worst part of Nightwing's history? If you're a Nightwing, like, everything about Nightwing.
Oh yeah. If you know the character of not even Nightwing, specifically Dick Grayson, this is your worst nightmare realized. There is nothing worse than this right now. It's awful. Like I'm going back and I'm reading right now I'm reading Batman Prodigal, where he took over for Bruce the first time after Bane broke his back and the whole Jean Paul Valley stuff happened. And I mean, just it's so Dick Grayson, and this is ass to the maximum. It's so bad.
We need to do some reviews. I mean, just put on the screen right now. I'm seeing a picture of a Nightwing cover with "This is just ass."
Absolutely.
The quote out there. Yeah, painful.
Have you seen? Have you seen those trends changing as well, Pele, where people are becoming less married to characters and more into the creators? Because I feel like, especially with Marvel, and I feel like it's happening with DC, is if I ever fully invest in a character or a series, that I'm just going to end up being screwed over. I'm going to have the rug pulled out from underneath me.
I've still got some customers that they get all the Batman, everything with Batman, everything with Green Lantern, everything with Guy Gardner. I've actually got customers that want everything with Batman. But yeah, I am. I'm getting a lot of people, especially artists, like, I want everything with Capullo. I want everything with, and the writers, though, that's almost like a new thing. I talked about that earlier on the previous show, that for a long time I didn't pay attention to who was writing. I just kind of like, there was always like a kind of baseline quality. Sometimes it was better, sometimes it was worse, but I paid attention to who the artists were, and knew that the story would kind of take care of itself. That's not been the case now that you have these wild fluctuations in talent and egos and stuff like that involved in these comic companies, that you really have to kind of look for that particular writer, that particular style, and their take on characters, and choose your horse. And it's a different era now in comics, because now you've got the art that's pretty consistent across the board, and the writing that swings wildly from one creator to the next. So, I mean, I know there's bad artists out there. You know, they pick up some guy on Tumblr and pay him $100 a page. You know, and that's fine. But overall, the A-listers and even the B-listers that are at each one of the companies are pretty damn good artists. You know, with certain except John Romita Jr. and a few others being exceptions. But shots fired.
It's not big drop off going from Ivan Reyes to Romita Jr., is it?
Oh my God.
But anyway, but now you've got the consistency differences between writers, and you've got to pick your writer that you like. And I'm paying a lot more attention to the writers now, a lot more, and customers are too. You know, and so you know, and also. Wes had asked me about the differences now that I've got hard numbers now about Tynion taking over Batman, and it's so far it's been about I think it was a little over 16% increase since King dropped off.
Wow.
You know, now, so that's good. That's real good. You know, at this rate, in about 4 or 5 years, it might recover from what King did, but. You know, but it is a recovery and it is getting better. So, you know, it's, you know, I worry because these egos and these personalities, you know, seem to matter at these companies more than their writing credentials and their writing capabilities. So, you know, we'll have to see.
Josh, you said you wanted to add something.
Yeah. I like I said, I've been reading the Batman Prodigal trade, the new recut from DC, which is technically the last part of Nightfall, and it collects it goes from Batman to Detective Comics to Robin, Shadow of the Bat. It's like those 4 books are collected into one story, and I really have to say, you can't tell that it was written by different people. Everything just kind of feels like it was written by the same person. They were all on the same page with where the story was going, with Tim Drake and as Robin and Dick Grayson as Batman. The art was wildly different issue to issue, but I didn't care because the writers were in sync. And I didn't even find myself paying attention to the names of the writers. I was more like, oh, who's on the art on this one? This one looks wildly different from the last one. But you could never tell there was a difference in writing, because all of those guys were on the same page and they knew what each other were doing, and they all kind of had the same standard for quality, and you do not have that anymore. Nowadays, I have my favorite artists where, Ivan Reyes is one of them. If I see his name, I just instantly want to pick that title up. But the writing, the difference in writers, I really noticed that as I've been reading these 90s comics. Nowadays, there are writers where, you have King's version of Batman and Tynion's version of Batman. They're supposed to exist in the same universe, but they're wildly different. They don't connect whatsoever. But then back in the 90s, you had, 3 different Batman books, and they all had the same version of Batman. He acted the same way, and it was like he could move between those 3 books, and you could never tell which one was which. It's definite. It's definitely in the quality of the writers. It's just terrible writing.
Editorial. We talk about editorial on this channel a lot. And I think that editorial was so good back in those times, and we kind of took that for granted, that the editors would kind of wrangle the writers and say, hey, okay, we need to make this a little, consistency here, and maybe that's the key, why you didn't pay as much attention to writers back in the day so much, because the editors were just so damn good that they kept everything going and they kept everything flowing, and you could appreciate that consistency, month in and month out. And now, editors aren't anything more than spell correct, they're copy editors now, just making sure that capitalization is right and that kind of stuff. It's not really being an editor anymore. So,
but
all right, I'm going to have to break in on you guys. We got a $10 super chat from Kenneth Dowling. Hi, panel. I've heard people weren't thrilled with the first couple issues, But since number 5, it's picking up from House of X Powers of 10. Do you think Hickman is responding to criticism, or is this part of his plan? He's talking about X-Men. X-Men number 5 and 6 have been fantastic. I wish that would have been X-Men number 1 and 2. They have seamlessly built on House of X Powers of 10. I thought they were fantastic. I have a review coming up later today where we talk for 20 minutes about X-Men number 6. Haley, do you think that this was all part of his plan, or is Hickman responding to the criticism of the first 4 issues?
Oh yeah, I think it's I think he's responding to the criticism because he started things too slowly, and I know he was looking at the long game on this, but the problem is the fandom is fickle when they've been bitten so many times, and you kind of got to grab their attention, and that's what they did with the 2 series. But if you don't keep their attention, they're going to drop off it's going to drop off like a stone. So, and it did, it really did. Sales just plummeted. And now, hopefully there's enough still around to kind of stabilize it and keep everything going forward. But yeah, I think it was a reaction of sorts.
I mean, sales numbers, I mean, in terms of what was sold into the shops was pretty consistent. And I mean, the other thing is that issue 5 and issue 6,
25% drop from 2 to 4.
But that's not unusual for the title in general. Nobody expected it to hold. And then second, I mean, issue 5, we saw art appear for 5 and 6 like a couple weeks after House of X concluded. I mean, these issues have been in the can. I wouldn't be surprised if Hickman's going to respond to some criticism, but keep in mind, these issues have been around for quite some time. I mean, they were made many, many months ago before the criticism really picked up.
I personally blame 8-page dinner with Cyclops' family as the drop-off. It was dull, and it didn't necessitate a $5 comic book. That was so dumb.
It was an odd beginning for the series, but it's really just picked up so much. I can't recommend you all check out my review with Skip and Tosh. It's going to be later up today. Also, This Week in X-Men with Doc will be live on the channel tomorrow as well. I'm sorry, Monday as well. And I think you're going to enjoy that. We do talk about X-Men number 6 in that. Thank you very much for supporting the channel, Kenneth Dowling. We very much appreciate it, and I hope you got your question answered to your satisfaction. So let's kind of wrap up the Generations thing. We kind of went off course, which happens here on the channel. Does anyone else have anything they want to say about the DC Generations announcement, specifically about the first issue?
I would just like to mention some of the timing with this. So it looks like Metal's going to wrap up in the middle of this Generation 1, and another big event, a couple big event books are coming up where you're going to have Batman 100 and Batman 1027, which would be the 1000th issue of Batman. So I don't know, can they really sideline Bruce Wayne for these massive anniversary issues coming up? I don't think they can. So I don't know. It's interesting. We'll see what the plan is. Are these going to be new titles that exist outside of the main titles in their own mini bubble?
We do believe that when DC 5G happens, everything will stop. It'll be an age of apocalypse where the names are going to change of the stories, and you'll probably see new creative teams, and there's going to be 6 to 9 months of new titles while they do the 5G event before it comes back. That's the way we understand it, correct, Perch? That's the way I've heard it from you.
Okay,
that is correct. Yeah.
Boom. Does anyone else have anything else to say about Generations? All right, we're going to the next one. So we've all seen the art from DC Comics Free Comic Book Day. Wally West is about to become Dr. Manhattan, apparently in Flash Forward number 6. I'm assuming this is the moment that causes 5G and death metal and all this stuff to happen when Wally West takes on that kind of power. What do you think about this happening, Josh? I know you're a huge fan of Wally West. You always thought that when they did Doomsday Clock that he had a bigger role to play. Do you think this was planned out from the beginning?
Originally I would say no, but this makes a lot of sense if it would have been a part of Doomsday Clock. I feel like this is awesome, and I feel like this is the ultimate redemption for his character. And I have to say, Scott Lobdell, I have newfound respect for that guy. For a while, I thought he could only write Red Hood, but he has definitely saved Wally's character. I do agree that I think this is going to lend itself to kicking off like whatever they're going to explain with 5G. But I feel like this was what was originally intended for his character to be doing in Doomsday Clock, maybe taken to the extreme a bit. But I do feel this was the original intent, and I mean it was obvious that there was stuff that was meant to happen with his character in Doomsday Clock number 12, and they just had to kind of do some patchwork around it because of what the sins that Tom King committed. But yeah, I think this is going to be good, and I'm very excited to see it. And it's really a nice tale of redemption, having him go from not being able to control his powers and being mentally broken at Sanctuary and killing people to, all right, now he has the freaking Mobius chair and he is literally God. So the redemption arc is pretty strong here, and I have to hand it to Lobdell for nailing the landing on this. I didn't think he was going to be able to do it. I thought that book was going to be terrible and just make things worse, but he stuck the landing with this, and he has managed to pull Wally's redemption arc. He's pulled it around, so good for him.
So, Perch, is Wally becoming Dr. Manhattan like the instigator for one of these big events, or is it just something neat?
I don't think he'll be the instigator. I think that Snyder has set up his own story, but I think you've got it will be a common thread to connect all these things together. I think they need a shepherd for for 5G and some of these other things. It's a familiar face. Wally is a pretty good person to do that with. So I think that you're going to see this as a thread that exists between the comics. I'd be surprised actually if. I'd be surprised if the architects of 5G are going to run with Lobdell's idea, just by nature of the people involved. But I do think that they'll include that character, and it'll be a consistent thread as they try and tie all this stuff together.
So who are the architects of 5G?
Oh, I think Bendis is probably the top architect. Yeah.
Boom. That's a good thing that we're kill this great idea for some Bendis idea. Yeah. Bailey, what are your thoughts on Wally West becoming the Flash? Or becoming Dr. Manhattan?
Well, it's an interesting turn in such a short period of time from, Heroes in Crisis. I think it's going to be interesting to see, how he's. I just don't know. That's quite a leap. And I know there's a lot of fans of Wally West that are really excited about this. So, I'm hoping it all works out well, and that there's a really good, it's all tied together very neatly. But we'll see. I've always liked Wally West. He's always been, as much as I like Barry Allen, Wally West has kind of been my Flash, and I've always kind of enjoyed. That's when I really started reading The Flash, was when Wally West kind of took the mantle. So,
you were alive during the Silver Age. What?
Huh?
Weren't you alive during the Silver Age? It should be.
No, I was born at the beginning of the Bronze Age, 71.
Oh, whoops.
So
I thought you were born in the 30s.
So I got into the Flash a little bit later because I was a Marvel guy. So it was he was always my favorite of the Flashes. So it was anyway. I'm wandering now. So yeah, I hope this is going to be good. It looks like it's going to be good. I don't know how. What happened to Dr. Manhattan? What's I don't know if that's kind of been tied up at all. So
well, I think he made himself into Jonathan Kent went back to his original world to bring Superman to that version of wherever whatever Earth it is that the Watchmen were on.
But there's some power then that's left behind. There's a mantle of sorts that I guess gets passed on. So,
because if people don't remember in Doomsday Clock, I believe it was only a Flash could actually find like Dr. Manhattan when he was jumping around changing things, and it was kind of by accident, I believe. It wasn't like they were intending to find him, but they kept like showing up and he'd be there doing stuff. Isn't that right, Josh?
Yeah, Reverse Flash kind of stumbled on him by accident, and he's like, "Oh, hey, I just found God." And then Manhattan's like, "No, you shouldn't see me. I'm going to just destroy you." Yeah. So that was a pretty cool moment. I enjoyed that. Mm-hmm. But if I could like toss a quick point in from what I'm hearing with these solicitations and stuff, I'm really liking the way that Wally is going to get the powers, because for me it kind of all loops back to where this all started, which was in I believe it was Justice League number 50, when finishing up the New 52 run, when Dr. Manhattan killed Owlman and Metron, which left the Mobius chair vacant. So I would think it would be pretty cool if they'd be like, yeah, when he killed Metron, some of his power seeped into the Mobius chair, and now that Wally has it, he gets the power. So I'm going to be really interested to see how they do this and how everything gets pulled off. But I'm all fired up and hyped for this. I'm like, let's have my boy Wally back. Like, come on, man.
Maybe he'll go back and just completely erase Heroes in Crisis. That would be great.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. Yes, please. Let's do that. That'd be a win for us. Like, come on, man.
Yeah, that would be the best case scenario. So the continuity skeptic is excited about what DC is doing with their continuity within Doomsday Clock and some of their other titles in Wally West. There you go. Maybe they're on to something. Lance, I know you're just a DC skeptic kind of all around right now. What are you thinking about Wally West becoming Dr. Manhattan?
I have always had issues with Manhattan's powers because of how volatile they are, and that he's not sustainable for a long period of time. I don't have a problem with it if it ends after a short story, but you cannot have Wally West keeping these powers for long, because it's just too many. It's too many problems with Manhattan. He's omnipotent figure that
it's like Franklin Richards.
Yeah. I mean, if you have, I don't see how Manhattan really is very. In Doomsday Clock, they made him compelling. He's a hard character to make compelling, though, and this is a hard. You have to be very careful with how you use these powers, and you can't just have him reset the universe again, and you can't just have him, because then it's going to be like, oh well, I can just make up anything now. And what I like is to actually have things earned, and there's too much snap of the fingers with Manhattan. I get what I want now because I want it, and I don't really. We'll see. I think it'll work in the short term. I don't think you can keep these. I would rather these powers left the entire DC universe. I'm not a fan.
I don't think he's going to permanently be Dr. Manhattan. I think it's just a thing that's going to happen that's going to push into these events and stuff, and then it'll kind of go away. I can't imagine he's got to be the Flash again.
It'll be fine then. That's fine then.
Usually whoever has the Mobius chair does not come around very often because it's just so OP. So usually Metron just shows up, or the Keeper of the Chair shows up whenever they actually need to for plot. So if they keep the power on him, we just won't see him for a while. I don't think that'll be too much of a problem.
He's getting the Infinity Gauntlet of sorts for the DC universe.
Mm-hmm.
He's getting the chair and the Manhattan powers?
It sounds like he's getting the Manhattan powers from the chair. So that's what I surmised from the solicits and stuff, but I could be wrong. But usually whoever has the chair does not come up very often. They're just kind of like that MacGuffin when they need to be.
It's Hal Jordan as a Spectre, kind of, when he took on that character. We'll see bits of him when he's needed. I agree.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I think we've kind of covered that pretty well. We've talked about this, but lost in all this, and I just can't imagine DC Comics having worse timing for a Batman crossover event than starting in May. They're starting Joker War, which is going to be crossing over from Batman, Detective Comics, and Cecil Castellucci's Batgirl of all titles. Perch, you're one of the retail aficionados. How is this crossover event going to have room to breathe? How is it going to get any traction if you have, you got Degeneration starting, we got Death Metal starting. It feels like this is going to be completely lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's that risk, but I mean, you got Jeff Johns, he's a name. I think you've got the Joker, which has crossover appeal outside of comics. I think that DC is not being shy right now about putting out Harley Quinn books and Joker books and other things with Black Label and other places. I mean, they're putting this out there. I think with the art talent and with the writing talent, and Black Label, it's going to come out as a standalone thing that is going to promise to tell a great Joker story, and that's going to likely be enough. So I mean, I just think it runs the benefit of having really strong names attached to it. It will be marketed. It's a long time in coming. I think anyone who tries to somehow.
So I'm not talking about the three Jokers. I'm talking about Joker War that James Tynion's starting up.
Sorry,
you don't even know what the event is.
I don't even know what's going on. Okay, so now I'll completely say the opposite. Yeah, I think that storyline's going to have a lot more trouble, and I think they're going to try and squeeze some last minute money out. But I mean, the attention's going to be on the Batman Who Laughs. The attention's going to be on Death Metal and 5G and everything else. And I think this is a storyline that gets kind of lost in the shuffle. I agree with you. Sorry, I agree.
I think it's nuts. Like if you told me Joker War was coming last year, I'd be like, man, that's exciting. I want to see what it's all about. And then it's like, wow, you just put it in like your biggest debut month where you're moving the entire line off of this. Not only, even if you were excited about it, what expectation could you have that it's just going to be a story? It's not going to lead to anything. There will be no like ramifications long term because they're just resetting their universe immediately.
Sure, I agree, and I think that's the problem when you have these giant events. And Marvel has suffered with this for a very long time, and DC's in the same boat now. It's the big event is Death Metal, and the big status quo changing thing for the line is 5G. So therefore, do the stories you currently read matter? And I mean, that's a hard thing for every single fan. And it gravitates, we'll tie all these topics together, gravitates to what you're talking about, which is people start just following the creators and caring about individual stories. They have less commitment to a line or to a character because they kind of are forced to. I mean, if you're told, I mean, right now, does any comic technically matter with 5G and Death Metal? I mean, what the current Justice League, does it matter at all? I mean, and which is a shame because it looks like that's going to be a pretty amazing story. I think that Venditti and what they're doing over there looks like it would be pretty damn good. But in the great context of things, does it matter? Probably not. The Joker War, probably it's going to be a pretty great story. I hope that people, remember it.
Oh, did Perch get a message?
No, yeah, Perch needs to mute all his notifications for other things. Every week, I find a new thing that's pestering me. But anyway, that's the thanks system update. I'm glad you're here. Anyway, Joker War. Yeah, I mean, I think so. Some people in the chat are saying they're looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it. I think it will be probably a pretty good story and something to remember. Unfortunately. To the mass audiences, it's not the Batman Who Laughs. It's not Death Metal. So, do we really need to care? I think is unfortunately going to be the way it goes.
Paley, the other criticism I have in this, when you're looking at Batman, you got Tynion, you got Detective Comics, we've got Peter J. Tomasi, and then we got Batgirl with Cecil Castellucci. One of these things is not like the other, and it's not because she's female. It's because she's an incompetent writer who shouldn't be doing a crossover event with these. Is that another way to torpedo a crossover event like this? Because as soon as I saw that name on there, I was like, I don't want to read that.
Who? What? Yeah, it's just that I don't understand. Usually people have to pay their dues to get into stuff like this. And Nope. Here we go. Yeah, do you want to write comics for DC? Do you want to come on over? Yeah. Hey, you've written one book. That's great. Come on. And yeah, I don't know what the hell's going on there. It's just it's so typical lately. I don't even know what to think about it anymore. It's like, if you don't have experience, if you don't have, if you don't have the chops, if you've never done anything like this before, that's okay. We'll we'll give you help. We'll give you a book to follow. You can. It's just no.
Here's Wikipedia. Look up. Do your research on this. It'll be fine.
Yeah, that's kind
of
not
how it works.
Hold up, guys. We got another super chat. Thank you very much again to Kenneth Dowling for the support, $10. Thank you very much. Sorry, I meant to put X-Men in the last super chat. You didn't need to. I figured it out. I also bought Batman's Grave. It's the Batman's at his best. Hands down, my favorite title right now. Warren Ellis is the man. Thank you for answering before. I know Perch, we had talked about this before, that there were some Batman readers that would have been gravitating to Batman's Grave lately because there's actually some detective work in there, and then there's the relationship between Bruce and Alfred that feels kind of genuine. Are you still seeing that with people?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a title people like. I know it's got some online haters, and some people have done some videos about, Alfred sounds like a socialist. I mean, lighten up. I mean, seriously, a few jokes in one panel should not make an entire video. The story is actually very solid. It's got great art. I think Batman is being a detective. He's thinking things through. He's doing the kind of stuff we don't see enough in the comics anymore, as we've moved to more of an event by event role. As people have been really, I hear from people they don't like Snyder's take on Batman, or they don't like King's take on Batman. Well, if you're in that camp, then Warren Ellis's take is probably perfect for you, because it is very much the Batman being a detective, and I think it's a really good title. It's telling a really nice, tight story. I have no complaints with it, and I know it's got very strong fan support, and I think the collection version of this is going to be do very, very well. So I'm sorry that Alfred with 2 one-liners is triggering a bunch of people, but it's a solid issue. What can I say?
But yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the art too, because Hitchy is doing great on that. Of course, that's his follow-up series to Hawkman. But when you look at that panel, it does stick out like a sore thumb. But it's also heavily implied that Alfred's drunk when he says it. So
sure, I mean, he's either drunk or he's just trolling. I mean, if you're going to troll if you got to have this kind of relationship with the rich billionaire guy that you're the servant for, then yeah, I mean, you'd probably be making those kinds of jokes. I mean, what else would Alfred do? I think it's, in a world where in the main comic we've got him just killed, I'll take this Alfred any day of the week.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I do want to say thank you very much to Kenneth Dowling for the support to the channel. I do want to go back to Lance. I know this is the first, I believe you had heard of Joker War. I sent you a couple of the articles so you could kind of be up to speed on everything. What were your initial thoughts, on Joker War? Are you getting excited? No, Batman's your dude.
Well, yeah, and I'm excited. Some things are alarming about it though, because you have Tomasi and Tynion are doing a great job in their solo titles, but so far their Alfred specials have sucked. Like when they wrote together, I couldn't stand either of those. The Batman Alfred R.I.P. and the Batman Annual 3 they wrote together, and they're both terrible. And so I'm a little concerned, but I'm hoping they're going to bring it they're going to bring it for this new storyline. One of my other issues was the solicits that they wrote for issue 94, 95, where they said Joker's never wanted to win before, but now he does. And I'm like, oh no, are we going to get this like Scott Snyder God Joker character again, where he has contingencies for a zillion things and knows everything? It's just kind of, Joker's always wanted to win. That's what he does. He hates Batman. Like, how hard is that? I don't understand. I know there's an interplay where they have their rules, and he will only cross certain lines every now and then. But it just seems like I hate it when the Joker knows everything. I like it when the Joker is more of a character in a story, and he's not the story.
I
Yeah.
agree. Totally agree.
Yeah.
You
But
don't.
I am optimistic. I think this will be a good as long as it doesn't go on for too long. I'm not buying the Batgirl issues. I don't care if there's stuff that's essential in them. I will not pay $4 for Batgirl ever. But I even with missing chapters, I'll read the other two.
Yeah, I wish that comic companies, publishers, writers, editors, the whole group, you don't need to provide deeper meaning for everything. The Joker is a crazy force of nature. You do not need to put these like, well, he's never really been trying to win all this time because of this and this and this. You could just tell a good story. You don't have to make it more than it is. And I think it goes back to this kind of insecurity complex that a lot of people in comics seem to have, where they're not content to just write the comic. They've got to make it more than what it is. And they got to say, well, the Joker you thought you knew is actually much more complex in this way that I've introduced this new wrinkle. It's like, but in doing that, you forgot to tell a good story.
Mm-hmm.
You can actually just tell a good story. You don't have to give greater depth. Chris Claremont for many, many years wrote very complex X-Men stories and everything else. But at the core of it, the characters were relatively simple. They had their motivations, they had their dynamic. They didn't try and make them more than what they were, and it worked. And I think it all. Snyder sells. His characters do tend to be a little bit more simple in the sense of where they go, especially the comics that really sell. So I can't agree with you more. I think this is a mistake to get this. You just don't need to do it. It's overcomplicating things.
Joker is, my understanding of the character while I grew up was that he is a gangster. And ever since the New 52, he's been like this supernatural being almost. It's just kind of strange. I don't see why Two-Face can never he could be a planner. How come Two-Face doesn't plan something like this? Or Mr. Freeze, like some of the smarter, they are smarter characters than Joker. Joker's not a genius. He's just like this. He's the agent of chaos, right? So,
it's how it all stacks together. You can't keep building on everything. If the Joker is simultaneously a genius and getting outwitted by Harley, and Harley, okay, so in stack ranking, so Harley is even more of a genius than.
Hey, she took down the Trinity by herself in Heroes in Crisis. She's something.
Shut up.
It's like, but actually Wonder Woman has her number and she's able to outwit Harley, but Cheetah is able to outwit Wonder Woman, and you follow this to its conclusion, and you get to a very weird place at the end where Mary Marvel is the smartest person in the entire DC universe. You could just, I'm exaggerating, but just you get it. You don't need to do this to characters, and I think you do, like you said. Why not do more with Two-Face? Two-Face has been relegated to kind of a dumb thug.
God, I'm just getting into Two-Face as a villain. I read Tomasi's Nightwing run from that ended the big run before New 52, and he did like a 6-issue thing with Two-Face in there, and it like put him as my favorite Batman villain. And you're absolutely right. He designs these master plans. The Joker. There's no better line to describe the Joker than what he said in The Dark Knight. Do I look like a guy with a plan to you? Like that's what Joker's supposed to be. And I didn't even know this event was a thing until Wes is like, "Hey, check this out. This is coming." I'm like, "What the hell is Joker War? I don't know what this is. This sounds awful." And it does not sound like it's going to be something I'm interested in. I'll read Batman and Detective because I read them now, and I'm not paying money for Cecil Castellucci's
one point.
Hugo Strange would be another character that could do something like
they never use him. He's a genius.
One point was when they were talking about Harley. When did Harley become like the Squirrel Girl of DC Comics? Really, that's what they've made her out to be now. And it's just like, instead of being the kind of hot, slutty girlfriend from Joker, who people kind of secretly wish that they could get a hold of for a night, just turned into like the idiot who can defeat anybody, you know, with luck. It's just no.
Happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
Absolutely. All right, so sorry I had to step out. I had a little. I've been drinking too much water here. You know, you got to stay hydrated. Did we cover the Joker War?
I think we got it.
Yep.
All right. So let's finish the show up with some weekly comic book recommendations. Josh, what are you recommending for the viewers this week? What should they be reading?
For the week that just ended, it was very light. Flash 88, Josh Williamson's Flash has been pretty much consistently great. Can't recommend that enough. Hawkman 21, Vendetti on Hawkman, it sells itself. And as much as I hate to do it because I despise what they did with this book, but I still enjoy it as like an Elseworlds kind of thing. Green Lantern Season 2, number 1, gotta recommend that. I'm loving Liam Sharp's art. Grant Morrison's doing some weird and interesting stuff with the Lantern Corps and Hal Jordan. As far as next week goes, Teen Titans 39, Adam Glass's Teen Titans is ridiculously good. Batman 89, Flash Forward's finale number 6 is coming out. That should be really interesting. And Justice League 41, again, you have Vendetti. Anything that guy does is gold. So this week's recommendations are pretty light. I only had 3 books. But next week has like 5 or 6, so that's a little better.
Awesome. So Nalo is recommending Undone by Blood. I just put it on my list. I think you were talking about it earlier in the Discord server. If you're not in our Discord server and you like to talk comics and movies and stuff like that, come and join us. We have a lot of fun there. Okay. Love Venditti on Green Lantern. So did I. I actually have every issue of that one. It's my favorite run from all of Rebirth. Absolutely terrific. Right. Tevye Smolka is recommending X-Men number 6, Flash 88, Flash Forward finale next week, and Justice League. All right, so Lance, what are you recommending this week?
I have to say I most enjoyed, and it's every issue that this guy puts into his comic, but there's something I learn about Japanese culture and lore. Usagi Yojimbo 8 had this just amazing intro explaining these mats and how they take 2 years to make back in the feudal Japan, and how they're used like in high society and you sleep on them, but they're for the kings. It was just used as a pretext to the story, and then you find out they're transporting a lot of these mats, and the transport is being attacked, and they need them for the king and stuff. And I'm just like, every time I read Usagi Yojimbo, I learn something. It's always something like about either like Japanese opera or something with their culture. And he finds a way to frame all stories around like an educational purpose. And I just find it fascinating. It's just a great comic.
Awesome. So William Medina is saying next week got Wolverine number 1 and a new Rags out. Absolutely. Black Cat is also recommended Batman 89 Flash Forward 6 next week. Pele, what do you recommend at the shop this week?
Actually, I'm going to recommend the dollar comics that have been coming out lately. It's been really fantastic. Just, it's $1 and you should jump into it. There's really good stories in there. I think this one is the beginning of the Mark of Cain, which was I think Batman 569, or what was that? Let me look at this again. 567. Just look into the dollar comics for DC, since we're kind of like having a DC special this week on the channel here. And Teen Titans next week. I'm still enjoying Teen Titans, and that I think is probably the most consistent title that DC has had for the last year, So I've really enjoyed it. Still read it every month. So that's it.
All right. So Moon Knight is recommending Unkillables. That will be next week. Dark Admiral March Hare, friend of the channel, friend of the podcast. He says he just finished Full Metal Alchemist chapters 1 through 3. Definitely recommend. And William Medina says the new Joe Hill book, I believe it's called The Plunge. That actually looks pretty good. Perch, what are you recommending this week?
So for the week that just passed, I think if you haven't had your eye on Cinder, I think that's a fairly solid title. It either works for you or it doesn't. But if you liked it, the quality is staying up pretty nice on that title. A lot of shops were offering a full returnability on that book, and still are if you didn't like it. They did it for the first issues, but some shops carry that forward. So that's an interesting book to tap into. I think Symbiote Spider-Man continues to be a fun little book with Spider-Man. If you like that character, it's telling an interesting story. X-Men #6 we talked about. Undone by Blood, I completely agree with. And the Harley Quinn Birds of Prey issue that came out is just kind of funny in hindsight because it is, it's what the movie probably should have been, but that is what it is. If you want to have just a comical experience, Iron Man 2020 #2 is like a textbook example of how to destroy a book. So that is insane. Next week, I got a chance to look at Wolverine #1. I won't spoil it for everyone, but it is. I was slightly disappointed, but still, if you have that feeling of the character, it's there. Something Killing the Children is something to look out for. God Killers by Aftershock, I would definitely check out if you like horror books. That's really strong writing. Undiscovered Country has a new issue. Flash Forward Justice League. So next week is pretty good. And as Tevye said, My Hero Academia puts out good work, and let's just hope it keeps putting out good work because that creator is now under some cancel culture fire and is apparently showing some feelings of wanting to just bail. So hopefully the title continues.
Yeah, that was sad news.
Yeah.
Old School Comics is saying if you like Venditti and you haven't read his Supergirl Annual, check it out. And Dollhouse #4. All good recommendations. Thank you all very much. We've talked about X-Men #6. That would be my #1 recommendation. That was easily the best comic I read this week. But I would recommend X-Force #7. Not as good as some of the other issues, but still quite good. And I thought Thor #3 was actually a lot of fun. It's got a big battle between Thor and Beta Ray Bill. It was pretty good, but it was mostly a Marvel week for me this week. And next week is a lot bigger. There's a lot of stuff going on. And I want to thank all of my panel members for joining me today. Thank you so much for viewing and being in the chats and keeping the chats lively. We had a great conversation. Thank you all so much. Salamat Po.